I was in Rock Springs, Wyoming, probably about 8 years ago, and I did a show out there. This is when I was still doing music, and did a show out there with with my partner Trey, and the show was over. It was packed. It was a really good show. Um, and so afterwards, there's not a lot to do in this city, right? It's a really small city. But afterwards, the guy who put the show together said, you know, I want to take you guys somewhere like after the show, but we don't have a whole lot going on out here. So there's this one bar that we can go to. It's small, but at least we can get some drinks and whatnot. So we were like, let's do it. And I wasn't really sure what we were in for. And mind you, during that time, I dressed a lot younger. I It just was a different person back then. 8 years ago, 9 years ago, I was a different person. Uh, so we go into this, we open the door to this little hole in the wall bar. It's a dive bar, and you hear country music, like, but not like Morgan Wallen country music. I'm talking about like banjo, like old school, like old country music. And when we open the door, the bar is literally, it's almost like right in front of the door. So when you open it, whoever's sitting at the bar is like right smack in your face. That's how small this place is. And it was almost as if a record had just scratched and everybody looked at us. And there was about three or four guys sitting at the bar, and they just looked at us and just stared, didn't take a drink of their drink, and they just stared at us. And mind you, there's not a lot of color in that area. There's not a lot of color in that area. So um, it was a little awkward at first. And I look at the guy that's staring at me, and for some reason, I walk up to him and I said, "What you drinking?" And he looks at me and he says, "Whiskey." I said, "Cool." I looked at the guy next to me and said, "What you drinking?" He said, "Whiskey." All right, can you get my guys another drink? I said, "And I'll take one too." And then I bought my guys some other drinks. And from that point on, me and those guys at the bar were cool. We were talking, smiling. They said thank you. And that broke the ice. And needless to say, we spent the next hour and a half there, enjoying the music, having some drinks, and just talking. I learned a valuable lesson that night, and my buddy Trey, his name's Dan, by the way. So Dan asked me, "What made you do that?" He's like, "Because I was uncomfortable." I said, "I don't know, man. I didn't know any other way to break the ice, and we were in an awkward position. So I said, to hell with it. I'll buy somebody a drink. It's the easiest way to it's the easiest way to a cowboy's heart, right? Get him some whiskey." So yeah, that's a true story. Welcome to episode 122 of the Perfect Mess Podcast. What you drinking? I share that story with you because I have recently changed my icon photo, my profile photo on my Instagram, and it's a black and white photo of me wearing a cowboy hat. And not a big deal, at least in my eyes, right? But I had two people message me and ask me, Out of curiosity, what changed with you? Why the cowboy hat now? Like I see you wearing a cowboy hat a lot. And I just your profile is just so different. Like you're just a different person. Like you used to really be like hip hop, really used to be I don't know, just I guess you could say urban. And first of all, in my head, I was like, man, this person must not have been following me for the last 8 years because I've definitely grown and changed. But I entertained the conversation and I said, well, you know, I got out of San Jose, California, and I traveled a lot. And I left the Bay Area with an open mind and an open heart. Um, I should say open mind, open heart, and ready to listen to the people I was going to encounter while I was on the road from every city and state that we toured. And I said, what I came back to California was with an understanding and a respect that we are all the same. We're just raised differently. And even though our views are different, our beliefs may be different, the way we were, brought up and, the cities we're from, we're all just people. And I came back with such a respect for everybody that I met, even the people that I didn't agree with, because it showed me that the world was just bigger than the Bay Area. It was bigger than home. And it opened my eyes to a lot of stuff that we are oblivious to out here. Uh, a lot of people think that people in all these other cities and states want to live in California. Like, oh, this is everybody wants to live in California, West Coast, sunshine, beaches, palm trees, Hollywood, and that's just not the case. It's not. And when you travel and you meet all these different people from different walks of life, it changes you if you go out there with an open mind, if you go out there with an understanding that you're going to come across people that don't see the world like you. And if you're open to the conversation, you may learn something. You may gain some respect for these people. And they may gain some respect for you and people from your region, which my region was the Bay Area, California. And a lot of folks, when they travel, especially when I was doing music, they traveled with the intention to spread their beliefs and their culture to all these areas. When we traveled with the intention of just spreading our music, not our beliefs, not the culture, just spreading our music, our personal music, and then getting to know everybody and embracing what they were about in their city and state. That's the honest to God truth. And over time, it helped me grow. It changed me. Combined with everything else that I went through over the last 8 years, it just changed me. I grew up. I didn't see the world the way I did years ago. Didn't have the same beliefs anymore. Not the same politics, not the same anything. Things just changed for me. It didn't start in Rock Springs, Wyoming, but I share that story because it's literally it was a funny story because you had to be there to see the look on these people's faces when we opened that door. Now I gotta set the scene for you. I'm wearing cargo shorts with black socks and high top Converse with a t-shirt and a Letterman jacket that has our record label name on it. And I'm wearing a gray Phillies uh, fitted cap backwards. I stuck out like a sore thumb in this country bar. They knew we weren't from there. They knew we weren't. But me being a people person, me being a quick thinker, me being in, I've always been in some awkward situations and always seem to figure it out. So the hell with it, man. I'm gonna offer somebody a drink. And it worked. We went to Des Moines, Iowa. We went to Des Moines, Iowa. We were on our way to Nebraska. And these are all road trips that me and Dan took. We went to Des Moines, Iowa. We were driving through Des Moines, Iowa, and we said, you know, there's this venue that we were gonna perform at. Why don't we check it out? We're supposed to have a show there. So let's check it out. And we go there, and it's in the middle of the afternoon, and the owner happens to be there, right? We knock on the door. He's like, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Yeah, we just wanted to come do a walkthrough. We're on our way to Nebraska. We got a show here. We just want to see what the venue looks like and what the sounds like." He's like, "Oh, you guys are the rap guys, the hip hop guys that are supposed to be here, right?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Okay." His name was Denny. The guy's name was Denny. Never forget that guy's name. So we do a walkthrough, and he starts showing us around. And as we're doing a walkthrough, he's very proud of his venue. He's showing us the sound. He's got this iPad, and he's showing us how he works the sound. And he starts telling us how they don't really do hip hop at this venue. That normally hip hop is at the club down the street, but they're starting to do more hip hop at their venue, at his venue. And I said, "Oh, okay. So what's the crowd like here, though? Is it, do they like hip hop?" He's like, "Well, mainly hip hop is at the club down the street, but the club, you know, the cops usually end up breaking it up after a certain amount of hours over there because it gets real crazy over there. It's just always crazy." And me and my boys now I gotta tell you, my boy Dan Trey, he's white, and I'm Puerto Rican and Mexican, and so we're different. But we're both from the Bay Area, and we're noticing immediately that this conversation's about to take an interesting turn because we're a long way from home. And he starts explaining why he calls it a black club. he says, "Yeah, they're always having." He goes, "They're always having troubles over there, but I know the owner and we all get along." He goes, "There's not a whole lot of racism out here," and he says, you know, "Out here, if you just say the N word like," and he says it 5 or 6 times, repeats it with the ER. If you just say no 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 no, they're just gonna tell you to shut the hell up and just walk away. And I looked at him, and Dan looks at me, and he goes, "You know what? I got a phone call. I'm gonna take this call. I'll be right back." And the minute he walks away, Trey looks at me, and I look at him, and we both go, "Damn, we are a long way from the Bay Area." And you know, the old me would have been furious saying, "I'm not going to perform there. I'm not going to do this. And I'm not going to do that." But see, yes, the way he said the word was way out of pocket with the ER in the end. But the way he was telling the story, I understood what he was trying to say was that everybody there gets along. And if you try to act like a racist and you say that type of word, they're just going to tell you to shut the hell up or they're going to smack you. Like they don't tolerate it. So he was the way he was telling the story isn't a way that we would tell it in the Bay Area because something could happen to you out here for that. But in Des Moines, Iowa, it's a little different. And so when he came back, you know, he had nothing but good things to tell us about the show. He was looking forward to it. And we just shook his hand. We said, okay, we'll see you soon. And we left. Now, being from the Bay Area, like I said, when I came back and told that story, people were like, dude, I would have never performed there. And I'm like, yeah, but you had to have been there to have that conversation with him because he the again, he didn't deliver the story like he was some racist. He delivered the story like they don't tolerate that stuff out there, even though he said the word with the ER, which we would never do. Um, so that was Des Moines, Iowa. Shout out to anybody listening from Des Moines, man. You guys know how to party, man. I like you guys a lot. It was fun out there. Um, Anytime I've been to Iowa, whether it was by myself or with anybody else, it was always a good time. Really love Iowa. Um, so then moving forward, we go to, this is another road trip. We're in Lincoln. We're driving through Lincoln, Nebraska. And we don't have anything to do out there, but we are hungry. We're not getting any cell service. It's the middle of the afternoon again, and we find a Pizza Hut that is off the highway. So we pull into this Pizza Hut, and never been to Lincoln, Nebraska. And we walk in there, and I mind you, there's me, Dan, another buddy of mine, African American. Uh, who else? Another Mexican guy, and I believe another white guy. And we open this door and walk into this Pizza Hut, and again, it's like the record scratch. Everybody stops and stares at us. It's a very old school pizza joint. We don't have any Pizza Huts out here in California or where we're at. I don't believe. I haven't seen one in years. But it's a very old school pizza joint. But we walk in there and everybody just mid bite staring at us. Again, not a whole lot of color out there, at least where we were at. And immediately, my partner who's African American, he says, "Hey, I'm gonna go find us a table and sit down. I don't feel comfortable." And I said, "It's all good." And I said, "What do you want?" So, anyways, we order, we end up sitting down, and it's just the topic. We notice like it's different, but we get through it. We don't make it a big deal. I can just tell that they probably haven't seen a mixture of people like ourselves hanging together, which is fine. See, the difference is if you go out there with your California attitude, immediately you're like, what the fuck you staring at? Are you guys racist? You know what I mean? Like that's the typical like attitude. And but you go out there, yeah, it's a little uneasy, but you kind of get past it. And you're just like, man, whatever, not a big deal. Let's eat, let's get through it, and let's move on. And we did. We didn't make a big deal out of it. Nobody said anything to us. Once we sat down, everybody went about their business and was eating, and we got through our meal, and that was that. We laughed about it when we got back in the tour vehicle. And to this day, I'm sure, whoever's telling that story that was there that day was like, man, that was quite an interesting trip to a Pizza Hut. um, and I'm sharing these stories with you because I'm explaining to you the how the change in me came, how I adapted and how I became the different person that some of you think I am. I know who I was. I know who I used to be. You know, I was your typical Latino, your typical, uh, you know, Puerto Rican cat. I had at one point I had braids, I had cornrows. Um, when I was younger, at one point everything on me had a Puerto Rican flag. Uh, I was a very, very uh, proud of my heritage. Um, because I had never went anywhere. I'm not saying I'm not proud of my heritage now, but I never traveled. I never seen the world. So all I knew was this little radius in the Bay Area, and that was it. And it took me getting in a vehicle and seeing the country to understand that this 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 life can be so much bigger than what it is here locally. And it expanded my horizon. It helped me learn to talk to people from different walks of life. It helped me navigate situations that most people wouldn't be able to navigate because they would fire off at the mouth and get themselves in some really deep shit, you know, 8 states away from home, which is very dangerous to do. So that's why I'm sharing this for anybody who has messaged me and says, you're so different now. I am different. And I've said this on my podcast numerous times. If you knew me a couple years ago, you don't know me anymore. If you haven't talked to me in over a year or two, you don't know me anymore. Yeah, you know my name, you know who I used to be, who I was. You do. But you don't know me anymore. You don't I have grown it. I've changed in so many ways, and I'm not ashamed of that at all. That's what we are supposed to do. We are supposed to change. We are supposed to evolve. I've said this before. I know I have. It is a problem when you feel like you feel guilty for changing. Like, for instance, when someone tells you you've changed and you say, no, I haven't, you have. I'm not the person you want to tell that to or say that to because I will tell you, yes, I have changed, which is why you're having a hard time understanding who I am today and you don't get it. I am a completely different person and I worked very hard to change and to grow. And maybe I didn't grow in the area or the direction that you wanted me to grow or the direction that you think I should have grown in. It's not your life, it's my life. And I don't apologize for that. That's why I'm sharing these stories with you, these incidents that I dealt with on the road, these conversations I had, because they were very pivotal in me um, changing and growing. You know, I went to Oklahoma City. Now, this was a tour that I did on my own. I brought a buddy of mine with me, my boy Mondo from Denver. Shout out Mondo if you're listening, man. I love you, bro. Um, but Oklahoma City is a place that I really, really love. I love Oklahoma City. I love Oklahoma, period. Anytime I've gone to Oklahoma, it's been love. And Oklahoma City has one of the cleanest downtowns I've ever seen in my life. But I go to Oklahoma City and this was the first time I had went there. And I went on a solo tour. So this was just me performing with a local headliner and then a bunch of locals that were on the bill to perform with us. Now, mind you guys, I'm talking about music and I'm talking about years ago. So this event was probably in 2005. So I am talking about 18 years ago. Gosh, that is a long time. I am old. 18 years ago. So none of this is recent. Mm. So I don't really know. I have my idea of what Oklahoma City is like or what Oklahoma is like, right? I'm a California kid, so I'm thinking country, close to the South. It's Midwest South. It's kind of got that vibe. And so I'm just thinking country, it's don't know if I'll fit in there, but I've done some music with few people out there. We'll see how it goes. So I do a tour stop there. Now we go to this club after we did some radio stuff, and um, the nappy roots. I believe they're was it nappy roots or nappy heads? Nappy, I believe the group was Nappy Roots. It's an old school country group, like a rap group. And forgive me if I'm wrong. This has been so long. But they were there. They had left the radio station when we were there. And then we ended up being at the same nightclub that they were at. And we were just hanging. This was the night before the show. So we were kind of just hanging, kind of putting our name out there and just hanging out. I wasn't with them, but they happened to be there. So I was with the guys that I was performing with that was kind of showing me around and meeting the DJs and whatnot. Anyways, at this club, and I'm talking, and we're in the middle of the dance. Well, the dance floor is kind of it's huge, actually, really huge. So there's people dancing in the dead center of it, and then all around the dance floor, people are just in groups talking. So we're talking, and I feel somebody grab my ass, like a whole handful of my ass. Now, mind you, I don't know anybody out there, and I'm blown away by this. So I turn around and I look like, and it happens to be an African American girl, and real pretty, real thick, and she grabs my ass, and I look at her, and first I'm like, I look at her, and she smiles, and I go, now you know damn well if that were me to do that to you, and I don't know you, you'd have slapped the hell out of me, and you'd have called security on me. You know that, right? And the promoter's like, damn, she just grabbed. I said, yeah. And she goes, no, I wouldn't have. And I said, excuse me? She goes, no, I wouldn't have. I go, why'd you do that? She's like, because I love Latino men and I like my men thick. And I could tell you're not from here. So I was trying to get your attention. And I don't know, man. I'm a guy. I was single at the time. I just thought that was that was wild. So we ended up chopping it up, um, laughing about it. But I was like, "Yo, you caught me off guard. I'm not used to all that. Like that don't really go down where I'm from. Like I mean, you do that back where I'm at. Like there's gonna be a fight. Like like guys won't do that because they know it could be bad, and women almost never do that in the Bay Area. And so yeah, if I didn't know that the women out there of African descent liked guys like me, so I was kind of blown away. And so that was an eye opener. And we all ended up at was it Waffle House? It was a late night uh, food spot, and just we all just became friends. Me and that girl didn't even hook up, but we just were laughing about it. We were all kicking it. And anyways, one other story on that trip, you know, me and my boy had a hotel there, and some of the guys from Oklahoma came by to hang out before we went somewhere, and we were all laughing, telling stories, about the road and whatnot. And these guys were telling me that I said, "So what's it like out here? Like, tell me more." You know what I mean? And they were telling me that they said out here, like we know you don't probably see that in the Bay Area, but out here you see black guys riding horses, like on the street. I said, "You gotta be kidding me." He said, "Nah, man. Like you could be driving on the street going to a store and you see another guy riding a horse pulling up and going to the store and grabbing something." I'm like, "You kidding me, right?" And he's like, "Nah, man. That's true. That's just like that out here." And it's so different because you really don't see a whole lot. You don't see none of that out here. Now, where I live, you will run into a few Mexican guys coming down from the area that I live close by, and they'll be riding horses and whatnot. But there's a few ranches up the hills, so every now and then they'll come down, ride the horses, and to the streets, and you'll see them. And the kids always see that, and when they do see it, they think it's cool. But in Oklahoma, that's like a regular thing. So again, I'm like, open. My mind is like open to a different lifestyle, a different. I mean, let's call it what it is. You out here, you don't see a lot of black guys riding horses. It's just not common out here. But when you're out there, it's a common occurrence, which is why you got a lot of country just brothers out there, country, and they look at the world differently. And they have a different view than what we do out here. Again, this is another instance of me learning how people move and how they view the world and how they're, it's just different than what I was used to. And I'm learning, soaking it up. I'm having an open mind, having conversations. The next one, well, I'm gonna skip past this other one, and I'm gonna go to another one where I was on another solo tour. And I brought a couple of buddies with me on this trip to Texas I went to. They didn't do music, but they're just my homies. My homie D and Mondo came with me, and we just came. We went to Texas Summer Music Conference in Dallas. Now, I had been to Houston plenty of times. Like I love Texas. Everybody who knows me knows I love Texas. Put an album out called Texas Game Breakers, and I just love Texas. I've always loved Texas. I got a lot of family out there, and so I had just got back from Houston, and Houston is a melting pot. I mean, you got Asians, Mexicans, blacks, white, you name it, everybody's out there. If you're familiar with the music scene in Houston, is very mixed, very, very mixed. And something that I noticed though, and maybe it's changed, but I know from when I went out there, and I believe it was 2004, something like that, maybe 2005, around that same time. Mm. When we went to Dallas, I just noticed that Dallas had a different vibe to it. And what I mean by that is we went to Dallas has this mall, and forgive me, I don't remember the name of the mall, but it had, I think, three or four lay tiers. To It was a huge mall, and they had, I believe, it had a skating rink in the middle. I mean, it was just big. I don't know, did it have a skating rink? I may be confusing that part with another mall, but I know it had at least four levels to this thing. And we were walking around there, and again, it's just me, D, and Mondo, and we're all three of us are Latinos, and but we're just getting looks from everybody. And I remember just people just looking at us like we didn't fit in there. Um, and we got that everywhere we went in Dallas. It was just a little different. Um, it was different than what we were getting in Houston. So I remember going to the music conference and ended up, we were at the hotel where the conference was, and I mean there was tons and tons of people there. People, I mean, we ran into Yo Gotti, we ran into uh, Chingo Bling, we ran into who else? The Yin Yang Twins. We ran into um, who else? We run into Young Bloods, uh, Slim Thug. I mean, we ran into a lot of people, man. DSR. We ran into just. I mean, I'm rolling off names that some people may know, some people may not know, but we ran into a lot of people, and I just remember being at this event and being out where everybody was having drinks. There was a pool, and and there was everybody was hanging out, and I remember somebody. Uh, we were kind of getting some attention from some black girls that were there. They liked us. And I remember this girl kind of shaking her ass in front of us, and and we were young and we were partying, and I heard somebody say something, but I didn't think I heard it correctly. And my partner said, "Did you hear what he just said to you?" And I said, "What?" He said, "What's up with this SPM looking motherfucker dancing with the black girl?" SPM is a Mexican rapper from South Park, uh, which is which is in Houston, Texas, and He's probably still the biggest Mexican rapper of all time. I'm not talking about anything else that goes on with that guy because it's very controversial with him, and that's not what I'm talking about. But anyways, he's very popular, and anytime someone referred to you as SPM, they were kind of taking shots at us because there wasn't a whole lot of Latinos at this event. We were only a few of us. And so we were not in our element. So when that guy said that, I turned around. I said, hey man, I said, we're cool. You ain't got to be like that. And he said, yeah. He goes, I'm just saying. I said, what are you saying? And he said, it was a joke. I said, okay. I go, it wasn't funny. I go, but I said, but let's just have a good time. He said, right on. We shook hands, dapped each other up, and that was it. Now, if I was in California, that probably would have went a different way. But like I said, we're a long way from home, and I'm trying to get used to areas that I've never been to and trying to make sure I adapt. And I'm learning how people view certain demographics. And that could have went a whole different way, but it didn't because again, I had already been on the road for a long time. So I was I started to learn that you're gonna be in some situations that are just different. You're not gonna always fit in. It's gonna get uncomfortable, but it's on how you handle the situation. Are you gonna let your temper fly? Are you gonna just be cool? Are you gonna walk away? Or are you just gonna call it what it is? How are you gonna handle it? So I had to learn how to navigate throughout these situations that I was being put in. All right. So Dallas had a very different feel than what Houston had for me. Uh, and then the final one I want to tell you guys is, this one I was with my buddy Dan, and we were in the Buffalo, Rochester, New York area. Now, during this time, this is when when Donald Trump was running for president, the very first time he was running. And, coming from the Bay Area, there's not a lot of people, especially during 2016, that liked Donald Trump. They did not like him at all. And so, us leaving the Bay Area and going so far east to do a show or a few shows, it was culture shock because we were seeing signs that were like the size of buildings, like huge, and they were in the middle of fields that said Trump Pence, like really big. Now, during that time, I was on the fence about him. I but I just knew that in the Bay Area, they hated him. So while we were driving through these areas, I was telling my boy, I said, man, I've never seen so many signs in support. I said, they would lose their shit back home in California if they seen this. And he's like, I know it's crazy because it was such a contrast to what we were used to seeing. Like when we're back home in the Bay Area, it's anything but him. And then when we were over here in the East Coast, up way up northeast, it was him or bust during that. And then again, this was 2015. This was our last tour. This was the last tour I had done. This was my final tour. 2015 was my final tour. And so it was wild. Um, but we end up at a sports bar. We're gonna have some drinks and get some, wings or whatever. And oddly enough, this is when Colin Kaepernick was on the 49ers, and this is when he started his protesting, his kneeling down. And this was not planned, but then 49ers happened to be in Buffalo playing the Buffalo Bills. Now we had drove by that stadium, and the field, the parking lot we drove by didn't have a barrier, like a fence. So you could actually like park and just walk in there, and there's no like fence or security. You could just walk in there. People were parked there. When we drove by there, I mean, it was cold as shit. There was, a little bit of snow. They were throwing darts and everything at these blow up plastic dolls, and they had Kaepernick's face on it. Like they were throwing darts and stuff. They had the number 7 jersey painted on it, and they were throwing darts and tackling the blow up dolls and doing all kinds of stuff. Again, if you're listening, you know during this time, all the protesters and revolutionary people, they all loved him out here. But over there, it was, again, a different story. They hated him. Why? Because they viewed it as disrespect that he was kneeling. Okay. So we're at this bar, and, I'm making small talk with this guy that's next to me. So he knows I'm from California. We're kind of having a talk. And while we're there, uh, the the news that's on TV starts talking about the 49ers being in town, and they talk about Colin Kaepernick and him protesting. And as it comes on TV, I'm like, this guy's going to ask me about this. I know it. I know he's going to, because he knows I'm from California. And sure enough, he looks to the left, and he looks at me and he says, "You're from California, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, what do you think about this guy?" And I said, "Well, oddly enough, I probably have a different view about Colin Kaepernick than most people from California, uh, where I'm from." I said, "I have a military family. So most of my family is Marine. The Marines, they're Rangers. I've got some Navy and some Air Force, but mainly Marines. And we just view that differently. I was raised differently. So I'm not a big fan of him kneeling when the national anthem is being played. I know it is his right, but I'm not a fan of it. Now, that being said, where he lost me is showing up to practice wearing black socks with police officers that were pigs. So it was little pig characters dressed in police officer uniforms. They were on his socks at football practice. That's where he lost me. So I was already irritated a bit about the protesting, but the socks did it for me, because you're on an NFL team, they have a uniform, and nobody should have allowed you to come out of that locker room wearing socks like that. Secondly, I have friends that are police officers, that have wives, that have kids, that have families that they want to come home to every day. And yeah, I know there are some bad officers. I get it. But there are also some great ones. And I took offense to that, and I didn't like it. So I just couldn't support it. I come from the theory that, you know, as unpopular as it is out here, I feel like, he got caught throwing a temper tantrum because he got benched. I mean, I've been a lifelong 49er fan. I've watched every damn game. And when he got benched, he came out of that locker room and he sat down on the bench, and he was upset visibly. And then they started playing the national anthem, and he just didn't get up. I firmly believe that someone told him, "Hey, they got you on TV sitting during the national anthem. That wasn't a good look." So I don't think he was even aware that he was doing it. And then I think he was like, "Okay." And then that story came out I believe it was a Marine that told him if he's going to do anything, he should kneel. Um, I don't know how true that part is. I know that there was a soldier that came out and did tell him that, but I don't know if it happened the way he said it happened. But then he started kneeling. And then next thing you know, he's revolutionary, and he is pushing a line about police brutality. And we all know the story from there. So the guy goes, "Oh, that's an interesting take." He goes, "I didn't know about the socks." I said, "Yeah, that's kind of where he lost me." And honestly, man, I never thought he was that great of a quarterback. He was super fast. He could run. But I always said the second year is when you're going to find out. And when he came back his second year, the league figured him out. and he didn't adjust. He wasn't that smart of a quarterback. He had a hell of an arm, but just wasn't that smart of a quarterback. So this is a conversation I'm having with this guy. Again, I'm having to keep my cool, having to understand that this guy has a very different point of view. Like I heard what he was saying to the guy next to me, and he was going off. He couldn't stand Kaepernick, and but he was had some choice words and blah blah blah. So we just had a conversation, and it was great. We didn't have any issues. Then we got to talking because the election stuff came up on the news. Now we couldn't hear anything because there was music and everything, but we could see what they were talking about. And he they were talking about the border issue, and we could see the video and whatnot. And he said, "Yeah, I just don't understand it, man. All the border thing and this and that." And I said, I have mixed feelings about the border. Now, mind you, this is 2015, so this is not now. 8 years later, that border is crazy, and I have a strong opinion about the border now. But back then, this is 2015, and I told the guy, I said, the only thing that I learned now, us having this conversation and us being all the way up here in the Northeast, is that I realize how far we are from you. Meaning, the border is so far from you that it's almost impossible for you to understand what we're dealing with in California, Texas, Arizona, and in these states where we have issues with the border and how we deal with them because it's so far. We might as well be on another planet. And he said, "You're right." And I said, "Because you guys don't have to deal with any of that here. It's not like people are rushing out of Canada to come uh, into Buffalo, New York to get away from anything. They're not. It's different." I said, "But I understand where the confusion is now because just now us having this conversation, I'm realizing by the stuff that you're saying, you ever been to that area?" He said, "No." I said, "Okay. I have a better understanding now." I said, "Because we are thousands of miles away from where I'm from, and it's just like it's a foreign topic for you guys. So trying to get you guys to understand it up here would be next to impossible unless you've been there." And he's like, "Yeah, I can see that. You're right about that because it really doesn't make any sense to me how they're handling it." Now, I'm sharing that story with you because we could have got into an argument. We could have got it. I could have said, "You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You live up here in fucking Rochester. You've never fucking been there. You have no clue what you're talking about. You have no clue what our relationship is like to Mexico, and you're speaking out of your ass. You should probably shut the fuck up." Now that's how that could have went, but it didn't. Why? Because this whole topic, this whole podcast, this episode is about how I've changed, how I became who I am, because I was put in situations where I had to adapt. I had to have tough conversations with people who weren't from where I'm from, who didn't share the same thoughts, beliefs, or ideas. But I had to learn how am I going to get through these situations? How am I going to navigate this? I can't do it with a hot head because I'm always going to get into something. And getting into something while you're 9, 10, 11 states away from your home is not smart and it's not safe. So you have to do the grown up thing. You have to learn how to talk. You have to learn how to have a conversation without ripping someone's head off. And you have to understand that not we don't view the world the same way, and you have to respectfully agree to disagree and have a beer because that's what I did. Or in the case of Rock Springs, Wyoming, I had some whiskey. That's how I've changed. And when I got divorced, I changed even more because I had to learn how to be a single man again, a single father. And I had to learn how to take care of myself in the Silicon Valley on a single income and go through hard times. And boy, man, you find out some things about yourself. Now, changing and going through everything that I told you about, you do lose people along the way. I'm not going to lie to you about that. And that's okay because they're not going to understand how you're changing. They haven't been on the road with you. They haven't done what you've done. So they couldn't possibly understand how or why you've changed. And that's okay. All right? That's all I got, guys. That's all I got. All right. I hope you enjoyed this episode. This has been episode 122 of the Perfect Mess podcast. My website is raymolina.com. My Instagram for the podcast is at the Perfect Mess Pod. My personal, that's also the TikTok for the podcast as well. The YouTube is www.youtube.com/at the Perfect Mess Pod. Please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell in the right-hand corner, and you'll get all the updates and notifications for any video I put up, any content. Please do that and share it. My personal Instagram and TikTok is at It's Ray Molina. And it's not necessary, but if you would like to donate, you can donate through Cash App, $ It's Ray Molina, or Venmo at It's Ray Molina. That's all I have. All right. Like I always say, my life isn't perfect. Oftentimes it is a mess, but for me, it is the perfect mess. Do yourself a favor. If you're on the road and you're in an area where you feel uncomfortable, and maybe the crowd isn't the normal crowd you're around, ask somebody what you're drinking and buy them a drink. It'll always break the ice. I love you guys. God bless.